Perhaps the leaders of the world system are insane. Perhaps that's all they are. But if they are mad and they really do believe their own hallucinations, then we may still wish to pay attention to these to see what form they have taken and will take. Because our would-be shepherds have method in their madness and a great deal of power. That again is from Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare by Michael A. Hoffman II. Highly, highly recommended book. Hello and welcome to another edition of the Stench of Truth. Of course, you all know the results of the senatorial election in Massachusetts and how it was won by the Republican Scott Brown. Now, as I talked about this before, there are many ways that this can be spun by the people of Massachusetts. Certainly, we could at least be hopeful that the breaking of the supermajority in the Senate by the so-called Democrats would in fact turn out to mean that we would now have gridlock, at least the inability to pass some of the things that are on the table right now that we want to stop or at least dramatically change, not the least of which would be the health care bill. But let us not forget also that we have cap and trade, which has already passed the House. Okay, that's something that's going to be coming to the Senate at some point in time. Okay, so there are a lot of things that are on the table that we could really, really hope for gridlock out of this. That's indicative of what corporate finance is. It funds both parties. That proves that both parties are bought and paid for by the same corporate financial interests. It's a simple equation, okay? So what we're looking for are people who are not entrenched with corporate lobbies, who are not the recipients of corporate and Wall Street and financial firms funding for their candidacy. Those are the candidates that we're looking for, that I'm looking for. Hopefully you're looking for as well, because you want to get out of the dominance of the corporation dominance that we have in this country, the fascist lock on the government of the United States by the corporate powers. And I think you are, because you watch my videos. So to break the hold of that fascist corporate dominance, we need, I hate to use the term independent because it comes with its own baggage. Independent in the sense that they are without corporate money, that they are not being funded by the same corporate masters that fund the Democrats and the Republicans, because we want to break that dynamic completely. And between now and the primary elections and the general election in 2010, you should make it as your primary goal, if you're so inclined, as I will be, to shatter the illusion that there's any difference between the Democrats and the Republicans, and convince people that both of those parties have been so totally compromised that you have to look elsewhere for candidates when at all possible. Okay? Now, there have been a couple of developments that are worthy of note. I should have talked about this before. There is a bill in the House of Representatives. I do not have the number at hand. I'm sorry. You can find out by going to house.gov. Mike Doyle, who is my congressional representative, is one of the co-sponsors on this bill. It is a bill to place a cap on credit card interest rates and to establish a national usury rate at 16%, I believe it is. I think that's too high, but it's a start. Now, I would point out to you that I think it was in July of last year, the democratically dominated, that's right, the Senate dominated by these quote-unquote lovers of the people, had a bill before them to cap interest rates at 15%, and of course it was soundly defeated. What special interests are being served here? Those of the constituency who no doubt 100% would support this. Or, let's put it another way, all of the individuals and families would support this, whereas industry would be firmly opposed. So who do you think won that battle? This is the type of thing that we face. So let's focus on trying to get the usury rate enacted in the House. If we get it enacted in the House, it puts more pressure on the Senate to come up with something. And even if they compromise, it's something else. You know, if it does bring the rates down to something approaching a morally acceptable rate, then that is at least a step in the right direction against the outright thievery that is being practiced on us. So that's one thing. Number two, a representative from Alaska, sorry, don't have her name right in front of me, has introduced a bill in Congress or is about to introduce a bill in Congress that would prevent the Environmental Protection Agency from regulating carbon dioxide, which would be a major blow against any attempts by this administration to enact any kind of procedural or acting outside the concert of Congress and the supposed will of the people to enact changes to environmental law that would affect carbon dioxide emissions. This is very important because this is a way to shut down the EPA's ruling that carbon dioxide is a deadly pollutant and needs to be regulated. So if we can get that moving as well, that is another area that we can have actual concrete effect on what's coming in the future. So we need to get focused on that as well, because that's a way to cut out that whole avenue of thought. Whereas the EPA and the executive branch can work outside of any congressional action to adopt standards and place limits on corporations and what have you when it comes to carbon emissions. And we all know where that leads. I've talked about that before. The last issue is that the Supreme Court came down with a disaster of a ruling that more or less gives corporations and unions and all of these other special interest groups the ability to spend pretty much whatever they want on the furtherance of their campaign goals in elections. Remember that all of this is a game, my friends, because these corporations that back these candidates, the only thing that they're really going to be opposed to are people coming from the grassroots, people who are outside their sphere of influence, who have not been bought and paid for, like every single Democrat or Republican running for any office, period. All bought and paid for in the back pocket of special interest corporations and the financial industry, all bought and paid for. Every single one of them. So get that out of the way right off the bat. The only people that these groups are going to be against are truly independent people who have not been bought off, at least not yet. So I would venture to say that you're not going to see a lot of huge amounts of attacking ads against particular individuals. Instead, you'll probably just see a ramping up of the same kind of things that we already see in the news and in the media when it comes to this type of campaigning. So, it's a major blow, but on the other hand, at least it allows corporations to go overboard in what they're doing. And perhaps in some ways it will shed some light on how things really work in this country. And perhaps some few, or maybe more than a few people, will come to realize that corporations and the financial industries already own and operate this government, already own and operate the election process and already own and operate the entire, campaigning process in this country. And by giving them a free hand to act as they do, maybe it will serve to wake people up, because they will be inundated with so much of this that they'll have no choice but to notice. So it can be a good thing. Just some thoughts. Thank you.